Hello everyone and welcome back. Me and the amazing Insomniak will keep you company tonight with these terrifying stories. Before we begin, a quick reminder, for art prints and originals, drawings and paintings, don't forget to visit my shop. The link is in the description. Also, my next video will be uploaded on Friday, May 4th and will be about your favorite compilation of stories to listen to at work. So, to be sure you won't miss it, click the bell notification icon and get ready. Grab your flashlight and follow us into the darkness. This happened a few years ago, when Rob, Joe and me were just starting out in college together. We're all from the Chattanooga area in Tennessee, which is only a few hours' drive to the Bell Witch Cave. If you're not familiar, the Bell Witch is the only documented case of a ghost killing someone. Truth be told, is a popular legend in the South, and by ghost killing someone, they mean that a ghost apparently bothered someone to death. If someone ever died after their siblings teased them, I guess that would count. Still, it's a real place. We came to regret the trip, and not just because of how shit the cave itself turned out to be. It was at least a 5-hour drive up the middle of Tennessee. You would think that it wouldn't take very long given that Tennessee is narrow from top to bottom. But it's all surface road, not real highways or interstates go near Adams. This is it, I said as we passed the Welcome to Adams sign, adorned with a cheesy addition, Home of the Bell Witch. Below the pair of signs was a hand-painted rune of some kind. It didn't make any sense to us. It was a sort of stick figure holding something in one hand, like a stick or wand or something. It was in a messy black paint, slapped on there, let to drip all over, so it seemed as if the character was melting. Rob, that's some kind of clan sign? I said. Fuck you, Jeff, replied Rob with casual ease. I just wanted to know in case the locals discover I have a black great-grandmother, I said. Aren't you from the South? Asked Joe. Nah, said Rob. Came here to take advantage during Reconstruction. Fuck you, Rob repeated. I love you, I said in a sing-song. As we drove down the main road of Adams, we took in the sights. The single stoplight, the cracked pale grey road sealed with crisscrosses of poured tar ran below the car. We passed at least half a dozen signs for local churches. One church was off the main road we were driving down, boarded and burnt up. Here's the next turn. A sign indicated, turn here to Bell Witch Cave. The road went from the light grey to a crumbling road. No more cell signal, said Joe. Try not to have any emergencies until we get back to the main road. Hand me some of those pretzels, I said. Don't choke, said Rob. I made a fake gagging sound and he punched my shoulder. The road turned to gravel and then a dirt road as we pulled into a clearing. There was a small house in the distance and a small trailer near the track with a sign for the Bell Witch Cave and admission. We were apparently the only customers to arrive in the mid-afternoon around 3. Sumptuous accommodations, said Joe. Unforgettable views, I opined. I didn't realize roadside tourist traps existed in Tennessee, especially when the road isn't near anything, I said. We got out of the car and walked up to the admission trailer. A bored-looking redneck eyed us. He looked to be in his 40s or so, poorly ripped-up cap with a hook on the bill. We were probably lucky we couldn't see his palms. No doubt he had enough crack exposed to send in a survey team. Yeah, he drawled. How much to go see the cave? I asked. 20, he said. His lower lip bulged with dip and he spit into an old Coke bottle about half full of dark fluid. For the car? That's not too bad. I reached into my pocket. Per person, he said. He grinned. His teeth were splattered with bits of tobacco. I looked back at my friends. 20 fucking bucks? I said. This was your idea, said Rob. Yeah, and we already drove up here, so, said Joe. I shrugged and turned back. All right, here. I held out my credit card. You ain't got cash? No, sorry, we spent it on gas. He rolled his eyes, then picked up a phone. Yeah, bring up the credit card reader. He hung the phone up. Be a minute. I put the credit card back in my wallet and looked around the property. Slow day, huh? I asked. Everyone's at church, said the worker. He spit into the Coke bowl. Most of the church signs were messed up, said Rob. There was one burned down too, said Joe. The guy shrugged. Wrong churches. He stood in an awkward silence for a minute, the redneck sucking and spitting, the sun wandering towards the horizon. The sound of footsteps announced the arrival of a short woman in a Mickey Mouse shirt and black sweatpants with a card reader under one hand. For 3 people? She complained at the guy. Me and the guys exchanged looks. Yeah, give it here, he said. He plugged the machine in and inserted a phone line. I handed him my credit card again, and he punched the pad. You want a receipt too? He asked. No, thanks, I said. The redneck squinted at me, but grunted in response. Joe and Rob paid as well, and we were miling around, waiting to be told where to go. Follow the signs down, said the redneck, pointing. Tours go every 15 minutes. We walked down a dirt path, hard packed by feet. Signs pointed towards a sloping area behind a stand of trees, where the path turned to rocks. We followed this path for a moment, and then a wooden walkway led to the mouth of a cave. For a minute there, I thought I'd have to force that guy to take my money, I said. Yeah, what the hell was that about? Said Rob. The Bell Cave in Adams, Tennessee, caters to only the most exclusive cash-only crowd, said Joe. We sized up the cave entrance, which was about 10 feet tall and at least as wide. The wind blew gently behind us, and the trees rustled overhead. The sound of the cicadas and tree frogs singing faded, went silent. The only sound we could hear was wind in the open cavern. The wind blew, made it sound like the cave was moaning. That's creepy, said Joe. Yeah, said Rob. We paid $20 for a glorified kazoo. I thought, I began, that you were about to say for a glory hole, and I was going to say that would at least be worth $20. Oh, we got fucked all right, said Rob. No joke, I replied. Shut up, here comes someone, said Joe. A guide came out of the cave and approached us. She was younger than the other 2 people, probably late teens or early 20s. She was dressed in a white shirt and jeans. She looked bored. Hey y'all, I'm Tammy. Wanna see the cave? Sure, we said. Tammy turned on a flashlight and turned to lead us into the mouth of the cave. The wind kicked up and moaned again, making the air vibrate and causing a sense of unease settled on our hearts. So, like in colonial times, there was a man named John Bell who moved out this way. There were some problems around the house, you know, knocking and all that, knocking on the windows, knocking on the roof. Cows gave sour milk, chickens laid rotten eggs. She sighed and ducked under the low ceiling of an outcrop in the cave. We ducked under it with her, and there was just enough room for the 4 of us. So shitty farmers then, said Joe. Shh, I said. Crops failed, she droned on. She went through the obviously conned story, while we looked around the dank, dripping cave. She said, It is said the ghost of the Bell Witch still haunts the area, and especially this cave where she used to live. Any questions? Have you ever seen or heard the Bell Witch since working here? I asked. No, not really, she replied. We all looked at each other. So you haven't seen anything or heard anything? Nah, she said. Gripping ghost story, said Rob. Are you going to turn off the flashlight and let us sit in the dark? Sure, she said, and snapped the light off. We were quiet for a few moments. Jeff, said Joe. What? Why are you holding my hand? I am not. Stop being an idiot, I said. Someone is. It's not fair enough to be Rob's. Ha ha, said Rob. I'm serious. Tammy, are you messing with him? There was no response from our guide. Tammy? Jeff, let go of my hand, said Joe. I am not holding your fucking hand, Joe, I said. Well, someone fucking is, he yelled. There was a rumble deep in the cave. Tammy? Turn the light back on so we can go. Fuck this bullshit, said Rob. Again, there was no response from our teenage guide. I stuck my hands out in the dark and stumbled into Joe, who started throwing punches and flailing his arms. Fuck, dude, you poked me in my eye. Quit holding my hand like a psycho. I don't have your hand, dummy. Let's go, I said. Rob, follow my voice. Grab my shoulders. There we go. Let's go, guys, I said. I turned slowly in the dark and put my hands on the low ceiling of the cave. I could feel the slope of the rock and followed it to the outcrop we had ducked under. Watch the... Fuck! Yelled Rob, ceiling. We crawled under and could see the pale light trickling in from the open cave front. We ran out like our lives depended on it and collapsed on the wooden walkway out front. Fucking rednecks, said Rob. Who the fuck just leaves people in a cave? Said Joe. Fucking rednecks, I said. Think we could get our money back? Said Joe. Nah, they'd have to hit buttons, said Rob. If the button doesn't drop a pack of camels, they won't know how to work it. Let's get going. Sorry about this, guys. I really thought there'd be more to it, I said. At least we can say we've been, I guess, said Rob. I can't wait to have your farts for another 5 hours in the car, said Joe. Which of you was holding my hand, you fuckers? I wasn't, I said. I'm into you, said Rob. You're too scrawny. One of you was, damn it. Ghosts, man. At least one of us got our money's worth, I said. We climbed the wooden walkway and entered the field. The sun was now just behind the horizon, and twilight crept across the sky. Darkness was falling. Let's stay somewhere tonight and grab some beer, I said. We'll play cards or something. The other guys agreed. As we walked to my car, we saw that the admission booth was closed up and dark. Even the lights at the house were out. They turn in early, said Joe. That way customers don't try to pay them, said Rob. More convenient this way, I said. The animal sounds I associate with the noise in the south, cicadas, tree frogs, were all silent. We got into the car, door slamming, and I turned the key in the ignition. The car rumbled to life, and I turned around in the dark. Something ain't right out here, said Rob. Yeah, phantom handholders are a real problem, I said. No, it was too quiet, said Rob. Nothing singing. And, said Joe. And, no night in the country quiet like that, said Rob. Well, we're on the road, I said. I wish you had let me bring my gun, said Rob. I feel naked. As long as you feel naked and are naked, we all feel safer, said Joe. We pulled onto the dirt road, headed back to town, and it slowly transitioned to a gravel road. My headlights flashed on something light around the next bend. What's that? Said Joe. I pulled around the bend, taking my time, because deer are at least as numerous as anything else in the south, especially that time of the evening. My eyes played over a lot of white shapes, standing shoulder to shoulder, arms interlinked. A group of people in white robes were blocking the road, forming a human chain. I looked from right to left, and saw they actually blocked the sides too, right up to the tree line, where I wouldn't be able to drive. "What the fuck is this?" I said. "No," said Rob real quiet. No. He just said that over and over. Joe didn't say anything, not yet. I slowed the car to a stop about 20 yards from the human chain. The people didn't say anything, didn't move, just stood there, arm in arm. My lights illuminated those in front, making their robes bright and somehow menacing. Then they started to walk forward, maintaining their human chain. They took a step and waited. They stepped together, then waited. They followed an unheard beat, moving in unison. "What do I do, guys? What do I do?" "Run them down," said Rob. "Run them down. They want us for their own. Don't let them take us, Jeff. Don't let them take us." "We can't just run people over," said Joe. "You'd be glad to run down 100 of them after they got you," said Rob. He lurched forward from the back seat and yelled into my car. "Drive, damn it! They'll take us!" "Rob, I started to respond, but he started to try and crawl from the back seat to the front, trying to somehow steer the car and get me to depress the gas. The chain continued its slow movement forward, but in another unseen signal, they let go of each other's hand and reached into their robes. Each of the people in front of us raised something in the air. A long, sharp-looking spike. Some were still shiny and polished, others stained dark red and brown. "They'll take us to the ground for their wood gods to come and consume us," said Rob. He looked up at me, and he was crying. Real, genuine tears. He whimpered. I looked at Joe, and his mouth was open, a dull look on his face. Outside the line was almost on top of us. I looked at Rob, and out of the crowd, a man lurched into view. His steak was covered in thick, dried blood. I suddenly felt like Abraham's son, waiting for my father to drive his knife into my heart as I backed on a rock in the sun. I put my foot down, and I closed my eyes. The car thumped. The belts squealed. For a second, for just a sick second, the car stopped and the tire spun. My window was smashed in, and someone clubbed me across the face with their metal stake, and pain bloomed in a flash of blinding light. But I kept my hands on the wheel, my foot on the gas. I ran over a large speed bump, then another. Who put speed bumps in the middle of nowhere? I heard screaming from someone inside the car, but whether it was me or the others, I didn't know. The car broke free of the line of people, and I wrenched the wheel to keep us on the track, gravel flying. The tire screamed as we slid onto the main highway and turned back to civilization. It was full dark now. The wind from my broken window buffeted me, but somehow felt refreshing. I looked and saw that Rob had been thrown into the back. He was covered in broken glass and cuts. Joe was sitting slumped in the seat. "What the actual fuck?" he said. We drove in silence the rest of the night. We only stopped for gas, and that was when we'd got into I-24, coasting on fumes. Joe went into the gas station to see if they had a simple first aid kit for sale, to patch up our cuts and bruises. My car looked like shit. 2 huge dents in the front bumper and indented in the hood. Red Southern Claymouth and something else was flung up the sides of the doors. My windshield was a spider web, and my driver's side windows had been smashed. I wasn't driving anywhere else with a car covered in dents and with blood flung up on the doors. I stuck my head in the back when I finished pumping the gas. "You okay, Rob?" I said. He was laying in the back, his legs folded up on the seat. I saw for the first time a ragged, round scar in his right leg. just above the ankle. "Stay out of the woods," he said. He looked at me, and the light in his eyes was feverish, bright, wild. "Stay out of the woods."
Just a little background information. I'm a 26-year-old female, kind of a tomboy. I grew up climbing trees, playing in the dirt. I've never touched a Barbie doll in my life. So back in the summer of 2002, I was 16 at the time. My boyfriend asked me on a camping trip with him and his parents. Me being the tomboy that I was, I graciously accepted. His parents were planning on a weekend of us going out rafting, boating, swimming, the works. I was in paradise. Now they had an RV, it was fully furnished, and I slept in the kitchen and living room area. So as a side note, we're out in the middle of the woods, a designated camping area. It was so quiet and peaceful. You could hear the river in the stillness of the night. It was soothing. I remembered thinking to myself, I could live here forever. The next day was probably the funnest day of my life. We went out kayaking, swam, and then my boyfriend's dad had a cookout. I can't remember the last time that I laughed so much and enjoyed myself so much. It seemed like the day flew by, but before I knew it, it was time for us to go to bed. We had a big day planned for the next day, and I was eager to get enough sleep so I could wake up and do it all over again. I remembered lying awake, though, just staring at the ceiling. My boyfriend was snoring, and I laughed as quietly as I could. He snored very loud. This was the one last laugh that I got before my life was literally changed forever. There was a tap on the side of the RV. It caught me off guard. I wasn't even alarmed. I just thought it as a random noise. You know the ones. A creak here and there. Just unsettling. Bottom line is, I wasn't scared or freaked out by it too much. I tried to sleep, but I heard another tap, then an unmistakable giggle. I thought maybe my boyfriend's parents were awake and messing around with us. Silence washed over the place again. I hear the river, the ringing in my ears that you get when it's dead silent. I had this sinking feeling in my stomach. I hear people say they get it when something bad's about to happen. I felt it at that moment. In the dead silence, I hear the giggle again, followed by a scraping sound coming from outside of the RV. My heart jumped into my throat and I felt tears in my eyes. Somebody's outside the RV, but I was literally scared stiff. I could not move a muscle and the scraping sound continued. I whispered for my boyfriend, but he kept on snoring. I was lying about 5 feet away from the main door. More silence. My heart is beating so fast that I'm afraid I'm going to have a heart attack. I tap my chest trying to calm myself. As I'm watching the square hole in the door, I see a small hand just appear out of the darkness. I almost shriek out in fear. The hand was of a girl, no doubt. I could see those fake press ones that you get from Walmart. But that still didn't stop me from freaking out. I sit up and start screaming. I mean really start wailing. My boyfriend's parents stagger into the room. All I can do is point at the door. My boyfriend's dad goes to open the door, but there's a sudden crash. He then falls back inside, falling onto the couch, out cold. A rock falls onto the floor. That's when my boyfriend wakes up and starts shouting. The mum is going insane, tending to her husband. I'm screaming, still in shock. When I stop screaming, I hear hysterical laughter from outside, followed by footsteps on top of the RV. We're on the roof. We're on the roof. I hear in a high-pitched, nasally voice from outside the RV. None of us have cell phones. It's 2002. And we were just now starting to get into the cell phone craze. So we're truly magically out in the middle of nowhere with no way to get help. The RV is rocking with somebody jumping up and down. Then there's a crash and the side door frame smashes in. The girl outside is screaming and laughing. She mocks me. The dad manages to sober up and grab a gun from one of the cupboards. He opens the door and fires out into the darkness. The pacing on the roof immediately stops. The shrieking girl outside suddenly stops too. Everything goes silent. I turn to look at my boyfriend. There's a window behind him. I see a face, a hood drawn over his face. I know it's a man because I can make the outline of a beard on him. That was all I could see. The man then raises a gloved hand and starts waving at me. I pull my boyfriend away from the window and start screaming. The dad runs inside asking what's wrong. I look back at the window. The man is gone. We drove out to the campsite that night with a broken window. My boyfriend's dad went to hospital with a minor concussion where the rock hit him. The parents called the police the next morning and the officers went out and searched the area. They couldn't find anything. No other reports were even filed after. I had to go through counselling and therapy because I had trouble sleeping for about 2 years after it. My boyfriend and I actually broke up due to the stress and trauma I was going through because of it actually. Eventually, I started to get better then. While I was in university, some girlfriend and I decided to go to the movies. There was one out called The Strangers. I decided to go back because I had no homework. Turns out, it was scarily like the experience I had though. I actually had a panic attack because of this and had to go hospital. A few months after that, I read a newspaper article where a woman was arrested at a campsite not too far away from where my boyfriend's parents' RV was vandalised, and they were arrested for vandalising some tents and RVs. I don't know if it is the same girl though. They didn't show her face or picture, but it did make me wonder. As of 2012, I no longer go to therapy or have nightmares, but I do own several types of guns. If you knock on my door in the middle of the night, you better have an explanation as to why you're doing so.
Our old house was in a corner, and in lieu of a backyard, had a side yard with a small deck that wrapped around the back. The dining room had patio doors that lead out to the back, and we would have barbecues and such back there. When I was about 14, we only had one desktop computer and one laptop for the family. My brother and I would fight over the desktop. That's where Diablo 2 was installed. So I would use the laptop to write music. On one particular night, my brother had a friend over and they were downstairs doing whatever, and I was at the dining room table on the laptop. As I was wrapped up with my writing, I didn't pay much attention to my surroundings. I heard a knock on the patio door, which startled me. I looked up, expecting my brother or his friend. The basement had a door that led to the back deck as well. Standing at the door and waving was a person, could not tell sex or age, wearing a Halloween pig mask. Thinking it was my brother or his friend, I mouthed, "Good one," and gave the person the finger and they walked away. I went downstairs to give them shit, and to my surprise and dismay, they were both sitting on the couch playing PlayStation. They swore up and down it wasn't either of them, and there was no way one of them would have had time to get downstairs and unmask before getting on the couch. To this day, I have no idea who it was that knocked and waved. I came home pretty late one night, and my roommate's bedroom was shut, and I assumed she was sleeping already. But I saw something out of the corner of my eye in the kitchen. I said her name, but she didn't answer. I didn't think anything of it, so I walked into my room, and before I turned the light on, something whispered, "I'm still here." I turned on the light in my room, but nothing was there. So I turned on every light in my house and knocked on my roommate's door. and eventually opened it, but she wasn't there. So I left her light on too and slept with all the lights on. When she came back the next morning, I asked her if she was messing with me, and she started crying and said she left because something was in the house messing with her and she had to get out.
I grew up just north of New York City, living in a pretty densely populated metropolitan area. I always look forward to the summer when my father and I went backpacking upstate. We had a spot about an hour north of Lake Georgia and the Adirondacks, and camped a few nights there every summer. One trip, a few years back now, we were driving to the trailhead on a long, narrow dirt road. Now we saw a car pull over with a few people arguing outside. This isn't exactly the most secluded spot in the world, so it's not uncommon to see another family. But it was weird that a car decided to pull over here, with no real access to any trails. As we drove closer, a man walked over and waved at us. We assumed that they were having problems with their car. My father rolled down his window. Suddenly, a female in the group screamed, "Get away from him!" The man then had a very serious expression on his face and began sprinting towards us. He was tall and well built and moved very quick. My father slammed on his brakes, quickly pulling the car into reverse. The man stopped, let out a very loud sigh. We just sat there, parked, confused. The man reached towards us. We were a good 10 or so yards away, but then he darted off into the road, into the woods. Cautiously at this point, we drove slowly to park the car. There were 3 women there, crying. They were his sisters, and apparently he just returned home from the army a few months prior. According to them, shortly after he got back, he began to act odd. He was diagnosed with PTSD, as well as an early onset of Alzheimer's disease. The women got back in their car and headed for town. They said they were going to the ranger station and going to try and find him. The rest of the day was fairly uneventful. We hiked to our campsite and fished for a bit, set up the camp for the night. Sitting next to the fire, my father and I felt some weird vibes. We weren't sure whether the women were lying or not, and if the man was trying to ask for our help. What was more disturbing was the fact that we were camping only a few miles away from where this guy ran off. We weren't sure if he was armed, violent, or followed us. Now typically, my father and I would sleep in separate bivvy tents, but we decided to stay in the shelter that night. It was basically a small log cabin with 3 walls and an open front. That's where the fire pit is. Neither of us slept that night. It was probably just my imagination, but I swear I was being watched. Now through my father, I didn't hear the footsteps or anything out of the ordinary. The next day, I woke up and went to use a bathroom. A few hundred feet away from my camp, I saw a small fire pit right on the trail. I placed my hands on the ashes. They were soaked. Somebody had a fire here very recently and poured it out. We had food supplies for 4 nights, but after I found the fire pit, we broke camp and left that evening.
This all happened last week. On Monday, after practice, I went to my friend Penny's house. Laura, my best friend, was with us. We had something to eat, did some homework, and were then up in Penny's room, messing around, talking to boys. Penny and Laura go on a fair bit and flirt with boys all over the world. It can be kind of fun, as long as it doesn't go too far. There was a thing about a year ago called the anti-boredom game, when basically boys would try to get you naked and doing all sorts of disgusting things over the app. Penny and Laura flashed their boobs a couple of times, and they said they even watched a guy jerk off one time, but that just seems gross. We had finished chatting to some cute older guys in Sweden or Germany or somewhere, when the next chat pops up. Normally people are facing into their webcam, but this time we were looking straight at the back of someone's head. He had crazy green curly hair, and it was clearly a wig. As well as seeming the back of his head, he had 2 mirrors set up on either side of his computer. They were angled towards the webcam, so we could just see the side of his face in each mirror, but none of his features. His face was covered in white paint. He started typing. "Hi girls, do you want to answer 5 questions and to make a sad clown happy?" Penny was at the keyboard. "Sure, fire away." "Good." As the reply popped up on the screen, he had a big smiling clown's face, red nose, exaggerated red smile, and a big yellow star framed its eye. He carried on typing. "Question 1. Are you girls happy today?" "Yes." "Good." Another turn to the mirror on the right and a smiling thumbs up from the happy clown face. "Question 2. Is it nice weather where you are? It is cold and rainy here in Clownland." "It's lovely and sunny here. 75 degrees. "Good, very good. This is making me very happy. Thank you, girls." Another turn to the mirror on the right and another smiling thumbs up. Question 3. Do you prefer cats or dogs, Penny? Penny was suddenly freaked out and looked at Laura and me. "How do you know my name?" No reply. "How do you know my name?" "Your username is Penny2003. It was an educated guess." "Cats or dogs, Penny?" Laura and I were laughing at Penny for flipping out when it was so obvious how he got her name. "Cats. Dogs are so smelly and noisy." "Oh dear. All clowns love dogs. That makes me sad." This time he turned to the mirror on the left. His face was sad frown. But that wasn't what freaked us all out. His face paint was different. His exaggerated clown lips were now black, and his eyes looked bloodshot and like they had been crying for hours. The yellow stars around the eyes were gone. Instead, they were framed by black rings, and blood-red tears were painted down his cheeks. It must have been some kind of trick with a mirror, or lighting or something. There was no way he could have changed his makeup. He carried on typing. Question 4. Is it true that you're a fucking slut, Penny? I was shocked, but Penny and Laura didn't seem to care. Apparently boys say mean things all the time on apps like this. Penny put out her middle finger on the webcam. "Fuck you," she typed. "We'll get to that part soon enough, Penny. But first, you have to answer my questions. You agreed to answer 5 questions. Question 4. Is it true that you're a fucking slut? No, you pencil dick. Well, according to Charlotte Murphy in your class, you are. Charlotte's a smelly fucking whore. Who the fuck cares what she thinks? Wait, how does he know who is in our class? I said suddenly, worried, turning to Laura. I'll be sure to pass on your regards. Question 5. Final question. Who would you like me to kill? You or one of your delicious friends, Laura or Megan? Of course I could kill myself instead. Wait, how the fuck does he know our names? I was panicking now, my heart rising up on my chest. I felt like I could not breathe. This had all turned horrible, and I wanted it to stop. Penny immediately hit the button to disconnect and moved to the next chat. People trash-talking on apps like this is not a big deal, but horrible weird clowns threatening to kill you is too much. The screen surged But when a new chat popped up, it was the same horrible clown. Question 5. Who would you like me to... Penny hit the button again before the question could be typed out. A third time it went straight back to the clown figure. Question 5. Who would you... This time Laura grabbed the mouse and closed the entire program. I was totally freaked out. Penny and Laura were trying to laugh off the whole incident, but I could tell when Penny's phone with WhatsApp. Question 5. Who would you like me to kill? You, Laura, Megan, or myself? Laura begged Penny to go tell her mom and dad. Penny didn't want to get grounded. You're right, it is lovely and warm here. Much nicer than Clownland. You live in a nice neighborhood. Penny replied, Leave us alone, you prick. My dad is a cop and he will shoot you dead if you keep bothering us. You agreed to answer 5 questions. Just come back onto chat and we can resolve this easy enough. We argued for 20 minutes. I begged them not to come back to the chat. Laura wanted to go back on. Let's just tell this prick to kill himself and be done with it. Penny was undecided. It was her account after all that this creep had found us on. Who do you want me to kill, Penny? Laura convinced Penny and I was outvoted. 2-1. We went back online. He was there, waiting for us. Welcome back, ladies. Who is to be? I see you are back in Clownland, you freak. Of course I am. Now, make a choice. You sick weirdo. I choose for you to kill yourself. We could see them now. Revolvers laid out in front of each mirror. Are you sure, Penny? What about Charlotte, the fat, smelly whore? I could kill her if you like. No, I want it to be you who dies. That would make me sad. I don't give a shit as long as it makes you dead. Okay then. He looked to the right into the happy mirror, picked up the gun, looked at it for a moment, and then held it to the side of his head. He was smiling into the happy mirror when he pulled the trigger. Flag came out of the end of the gun, and he began laughing. You said it would make you sad. That was the happy mirror, Penny typed. Clever girl. I try again. This time he picked up the sad mirror gun and turned to face the left-hand mirror. Again, the makeup change was a shock. He held the gun and frowned into the mirror. He pulled the trigger. All 3 of us screamed. His head was a crimson explosion. There was no way he could have faked it. His lifeless body just loaded in his chair, the top of his head a ruin of gore and bone. We must have carried on, screaming and crying, as a few moments later, Penny's mom burst into the room. We turned at the noise, and Penny ran crying into her mom's arms, babbling an explanation. When we looked back to the screen, the clown was gone, the connection was gone, and the app was searching for a stranger to chat to. 2 days later in school, Charlotte Murphy confronted Penny during lunch break. I was chatting to some weird online last night who said he knew you, Penny. He said you called me a fat whore. Well, fuck you, you fucking slut. Penny was really upset. The last few days had been so traumatic with what we had all seen. Penny was worried that Charlotte might try to confront her again, so agreed to walk her home. When we got to her house, she reached into the mailbox and her face went white. When she pulled out her hand, there was a handwritten envelope which read, To Penny the fucking slut. Return address, Clownland. Inside, there was a clown's red nose. As we both looked around desperately. You really do live in a nice neighborhood, Penny. Hey there, and thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. And if you like my videos and want to see more, subscribe to my channel. Do you want to share your story or say hi? You can find my email below. And don't forget to follow me on my social media. for behind the scenes videos, and I will see you all in my next video.